That is not obviously for us. That's for econ. So let's go ahead and get started here. And oops, we are working on chapter 7. And chapter 7, I'm going to argue, I mean, and it's all relative, and I know some of you are going to laugh at this, relatively from a management accounting, whatever, is relatively new. Okay. Back in the early 80s, they didn't really have activity-based costing. So it's really something that's come about, I'm going to say, in the last 30 years or so. And you saw this in a number of industries, what have you, in the 90s and then in the early 2000s. And what they were really looking at is things like customer profitability. Banks, financial institutions did it all the time. Is that customer profitable? And that's why today when you go and you look at like loan rates to borrow money or whatever, they'll offer you a discount on your interest rate, what have you. Sometimes all you need is like 2 accounts at the bank, okay? And sometimes you need like an automatic withdrawal or something like that. But sometimes it's like just, hey, if you have 2 accounts. And the reason is that the bankers have found out that the more people that, the more accounts you have, the more profitable you are as a customer. So what they want to do is encourage you to have not just a checking account, but a checking and savings account. And they did that all based on activity-based costing, okay? And I think I've mentioned in this class, I know I've probably mentioned it before, but part of it boils down to, and I mean, it fits in a lot of different spots. I had a buddy that was there with a stopwatch on death claims. He was working at a life insurance company and he was on a stopwatch on death claims. And I go, not only does that sound a little morbid, but it sounds like, really? And he goes, how else do I know how much it costs? How much does it cost to process a death claim? How much does it cost to process an insurance policy? How much does it cost to, and especially when you think in terms of services, okay, how much does it cost? I mean, how does the hospital come up with the charge for, that particular surgery or whatever? How much does it cost? And that's where a lot of these things, as far as customer profitability, product line profitability, have come about. And a big part of it is, if a product, you can actually increase profits by reducing the amount of products you sell, okay? And when we first started talking about that, especially the marketing people would scratch their heads and go, there's no way. And what it causes you to do is look at each product line, and is that product line, profitable or not? And, or is a customer profitable? I used to have some customers when I was in sales, boy, they were great people, but they demanded a lot of hand-holding and a lot of work and what have you. And in the grand scheme of things, were they worth it? And the answer is probably no. Now, does that mean I just said no to a customer in that case? No, but you also know that, some of those folks weren't necessarily profitable. And on the other hand, you had some big guys that spent a lot of money and they never called, they never had. And so part of it is looking at, hey, is that customer profitable? And if they're not profitable, it's not necessarily maybe get rid of the customer, okay? It may be, hey, can we train that customer so that instead of calling our helpline, they find the link on our website into our database that answers the question, okay? So they don't call us, but instead they use, whatever we have online, whatever we have available to do those types of things. So there were things like that were done that you and I find today that we don't even think about, that were kind of a direct result, if you will, of chapter 7. So with that being said, let's start with on chapter 7, exercise 7.2. It's on page 332. Okay, it's on page 332. And what we have here is we have one other quick note. Chapter 7 is not required for any business. Okay, there is nothing that says you would have to do chapter 7 or activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is difficult to implement. And it probably needs you to rethink your entire accounting system, what have you. That being said, it can be the difference between you making money and losing money, staying in business and going out of business. So is it critical? And the answer is yes. Okay. Is it required by any, federal or what have you? And the answer is no. Okay. And when I think about it, and I'm going to kind of use example 7.2 here, back when I was in college back in the day, this would have been the early 80s, I owned my own company and we cleaned offices. Okay. And I'd go out to quote on business. Okay. And at the time you could smoke in an office building. Okay. And I knew some of the things I took into account was how big of an office space. Okay. How many desks were in there. Okay. And I took all that. I mean, how many people came into the office on a normal day? Because the more people you had, the dirtier it was going to be. But one of the simple ones that I took into account was, how many smokers do you have? Okay. Because if you've ever been around a smoker, and not to denigrate or what have you, but it's messy with the ashtrays and dumping the ashtrays in the garbage can and throwing, and then cleaning out the garbage and whatever. It's a messy proposition to clean up the office after a smoker. And so there was kind of a surcharge, if you will, on offices with smokers. Now, I didn't have activity-based costing at the time to come up with that, but obviously that would have been perhaps one of those activities to consider it, or to consider doing it with, or using, what have you. So looking at exercise 7.2, if you take a look at the very top of page 333 there, they have a list of their expenses, driver and guard wages, vehicle operating expenses, what have you. And then underneath that, they have a table with percentages. Okay. So if you look at driver and guard wages for travel, it's 50%. And for pickup and delivery, it's 35%. A lot of chapter 7 is just multiplying the numbers together and seeing, what you have there. And so that's the first part of this. That's what we're going to do here in exercise 7.2. And then we're going to go ahead and apply it to a couple of situations and modify it and what have you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the delivery and guard wages, and we're going to break it up between various activities. Okay. We're going to break it up between various activities. And in this particular case, they broke it up into 4 activities. They broke things up into travel, pickup and delivery, customer service, other, and a total. So we're going to use that as columns. And the first one is the driver and guard wages. And notice the total amount spent there was 720 grand. And all we're going to do is take the 720, and I'm going to do it here for the first one, 720 times the 50%. And we're going to get 360 grand for travel. And for pickup and delivery, we're going to take the 720 grand. And really all this becomes is an Excel spreadsheet times the 0.35, okay, which is the 35% of their time. And this is where my guy, my buddy spending time with his stopwatch comes into play, okay. And it gives me 252,000. And then customer service was 72 grand. Once again, 720 times 10%, 72 grand. And then other, really don't like that category, but 36 grand, for a total then of 720 grand. And so all I've done is taken that 720 that was given there in the table at the very top and broke it up into each of the expenses. Okay. And so now I'm going to do the same thing with vehicle operating expense. Okay. And in this case, it's 70% of 280 grand. So 70% of 280 grand is 196. Okay. And I'm just going to multiply, 14 grand, 0 for customer service, and 70 grand for other. Now, I can't give you a great idea on what some of these are. I just kind of have to take their word for it that they've done. That's at 228,000. 280,000, sorry. And then I have vehicle depreciation. And vehicle depreciation is going to be 72 grand, 18 grand, by 0, 30 grand, 120. Okay. Keep in mind, as I'm doing this, it really came about from service companies and what have you, that where a lot of the early research on this was done. Once again, this is a way, if you've got direct labor and direct materials and whatever, this is not a way for doing that. Okay. Direct materials we can tie to the product. Direct labor we can tie to the product. This is for all those other expenses. And it really worked out great for like service businesses, what have you. Okay. And I'll give you another example here when I'm done with this. We've got customer rep. I think it's salaries, isn't it? Customer rep. I'm just going to put customer rep salaries. And that was 0 for travel. It's 0 for pickup and delivery. Most of it's going to customer service, which makes sense, 144 grand. And then 16 grand for other. And once again, I'm just getting these by multiplying that 160 grand times the percentages in that table. Office expense. Okay, once again, 0 for office expense. Pickup and delivery, I'd probably disagree a little bit with, but we'll go with their percentages. I don't know how they got them. 6 grand for pickup and delivery, 9 grand for customer service, 15 grand for other, for a total of 30. And finally, I've got admin expense. And it's 0, 16 grand, 192. Makes sense, 190, most of it's going to customer service. 112 and 320. Then we run totals. I'll show you what we're going to do with those here. Question doesn't ask for it, but then we're just going to run totals, and we're going to have 628,000 for travel. Pickup and delivery is 306 grand. Customer service is 417. Other is 279. And God willing, adding across and adding down better be equal here at 1,630,000. So that's what I go ahead and do. And that's kind of our as it mentions there, our first stage allocation. Okay, this is our first stage allocation. And that's all that's required for our first stage allocation. And then what we would do, is we would take this 628 grand, which is for travel expense, and probably divide it I'm going to say by number of miles, whatever the activity driver is, to come up with a cost per mile. And then I would know, based upon how many miles were being driven, what have you, how to charge customers. Now, give you an example that happened this last week with my mom, okay? And I could use another example from when I was in, cleaning offices. We were talking, my mom's 82, lives alone in a house, and has somebody take care of the lawn, okay? And she's going, man, they didn't ask for a raise this year, and it's relatively inexpensive. At which point I go, yep. I go, is your neighbor down the street using the same company? She goes, yeah. Because she goes, when they're done with my lawn, they just walk down to the other lawn and mow that. And I go, yes, you have a small lawn, and her neighbor has a small lawn as well. I mean, they're on tiny lots. But I go, that makes perfect sense. Think about it. They stop once. They drive to your house. They don't have to load up the equipment. They don't have to take it to another location. They don't have to drive any miles. They can just basically walk the stuff down the street, okay, down the block, and mow another lawn. So you're benefiting, if you will, from the fact that they don't have to, pack the stuff up, what have you. They only have to unpack it and pack it once. Okay, back when I was cleaning offices, I mean, if they needed the office cleaned every night, they were going to have to pay for my travel there every night. But if I had other offices in the complex that were done on maybe Tuesdays and Sundays, or Tuesdays in the weekend, hey, if I can do a Tuesday in the weekend, I have no other travel expense. Okay, all I have to do is go from one office to the other. That's very efficient for me. I can charge you less than if I had to go to a different building, get in the car, load up the equipment, what have you. Okay, so it's things like that where this activity-based costing comes into play. So what you would do then is you would take these expenses, whoops, sorry about that. Take these expenses for travel, divide it by the number of miles and come up with a cost per mile. And then that would go into your rate card. And so when your salesman or what have you were out with customers, they would just figure out how many miles you were, maybe from the last customer, maybe from wherever, okay, and charge you for that. The next item is pickup and deliveries. So maybe that I divide by the number of pickups. How many pickups do you want per week? One a week, 3 times a week, because I have costs every time I have the truck stop at your location, okay? That's going to be a separate pickup, okay? And that's going to generate costs that I've got to cover is from my business perspective, what have you. So that might be businesses. Pardon me, that might be pickups. Customer service might be something like number of calls. I don't know. Other is one of those, kind of get lost and I can't give you a good idea. But that's what you're going to do is you're going to take those total costs, divide it by the percentages or multiply it by the percentages. And then you're going to divide it by the cost driver, whatever that is. Miles, pickups are the two obvious ones. I don't have two obvious ones for the others too. And then when you have to quote a piece of business or what have you, you've got an idea of how to charge for it, what have you. So that's what we call stage one. Now let's go ahead and look at exercise 7.3, which is right beneath it. Oops. And this asks us, using different software again here, what have you, to come up with the second stage. And once again, they've got a bunch of data there, caring for the lawns, what have you. And notice they've got the activity cost pool, and notice they use estimated overhead costs. Okay, sometimes those are going to be used to come up with the rate, because everybody wants to quote the year in advance, what have you. And so to do it, you sometimes have to use activity rates. I am going to go back to 7.2 just for one quick second here. Just so. When we took that 628 and divided by it and came up with that cost per mile, okay, that's our what we call our activity rate. The reason why I wanted to point that out is that's what we're calculating in exercise 7.3. We're calculating the activity rate. So with that being said, now let's continue on with 7.3. Okay, and what we're going to do for 7.3 is we're going to take those activity cost pools. We're going to put the activity cost pool. Okay, and they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items there. They've got caring for the lawn. Okay, they've got low maintenance garden beds. So we're just going to go garden beds low. Low maintenance. And I don't know what, I mean, I'm not a gardener, so I can't tell you the difference between a low maintenance and high maintenance. Garden beds high. High maintenance. Travel to jobs. And customer billing and service. So we've got estimated costs, and they gave us those were 72 grand, 26.4, 41.4, 32.50, and 87.50. Okay, then they have expected activity. And this is where some estimates at the beginning of the year are going to come into hand. 150,000 square feet. 20,000 square feet. 15,000 square feet. So all those were square foot, and that makes sense. Caring for the lawn, garden beds, low and high maintenance, whatever. Travel to jobs is 12,500. That's miles. And there are 25 customers. Okay. So that is all the information they gave us there in the tables. Okay. Both those tables, the activity cost pool, and then the estimated costs and the expected activity. So now we're going to come up with activity rates. I should point out the next couple of chapters in my mind are relatively speaking easy compared to a couple of those chapters we've had. The last couple of chapters like 9 and 10 get a little bit, more confusing or what have you, but these are really pretty much straightforward. As long as you read the question and divide, multiply, what have you, by you're in pretty good shape. So now to get the activity rate, all we have to do is take the estimated cost, divide it by the activity, okay? And we're going to get 48 cents. Yeah, let me get it correct here. We're going to get 48 cents, okay, per square foot of lawn. Okay. And caring for beds, low maintenance, when we take 26.4 divided by 20 grand, we're going to get $1.32 per square foot. Okay. High maintenance, $2.76 a square foot. And travel to jobs, 26 cents a mile. That's 32.5 divided by 12.5. And customer service and billing for 27 customers is $3.50. So those are my activity rates. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give those rates to my salesman. Okay. And he's going to go out to somebody's house with those types of rates. I should have brought my calculator, but that's fine. So he's going to go out to a customer. That's all that's required of the question. But how he's going to use that is now when he goes out to the customer, okay, he's going to look at the square feet. And suppose the customer wants the lawn mowed once a week for, let's make up 30 weeks. They want the, they only have a low maintenance bed. So they only have a low maintenance bed. Okay. And the travel is, let's say 10 miles. I'm going to have to make up some other numbers here. And it's obviously one customer. And now when I go out to visit that particular person, okay, I can start to say, okay, your lawn is 10,000 square feet. We're going to charge you 48 cents a square foot. Okay. It's pretty high rates, but we'll go with it. $480. If I make any math errors, just let me know here. We're going to do that for 30 weeks. That one I'm not going to try to do in my head. Yep. 14.4. Okay, they have a low maintenance bed. Let's make it 1,000 square feet. And I'm picking numbers that are easy, times $1.32, 1,320. I have to travel 10 miles to get there. So I've got 10 miles. Oh, and we're only going to take care of those once a month. So we're going to take care of those. That's going to be 1,320. And I don't know if these are theoretically they're per time. So I'm going to just go with per time here. So, and we're going to only do that about 8 times during the year, about once a month. So I've got to go back to my calculator here. $10,560. Travel, I'm 10 miles and I'm 26 cents a mile. So it's $2.60. Got to go 30 times. $78. And one customer is $350. So assuming those were my numbers, then I can just add those up, and that's my quote to that customer to do that particular lawn for that, you know, for the year. But that's how then I could use the data. And keep in mind, the benefit of this is, okay, and the thing that I think a lot of companies have forgotten and don't realize is that if you get these numbers wrong, this chapter could easily be the most important, one of the most important chapters for a successful business this semester. Because if you get these numbers wrong, okay, and you're losing a bunch of business, there are times, as I kind of started class today, where it's okay to lose business if it's unprofitable business. Now, if you can find a way to make it profitable, God bless. But if the business is going to be unprofitable, sometimes you're better off saying, you know what, I can't compete. And when you get all done with this, and I'm sure, you know, I'm looking here, it's about 25 grand in grand numbers. You know, somebody comes and says, well, somebody else will do it for 15. It's really hard as the salesman, but I'm sure many of us have seen this happen before where you go, you know what, that's a great deal. You better take advantage of it. And you know what, if my competitor is going to, I mean, assuming our costs are similar, if he wants to do business that's going to lose money like that for him, go for it, you know, go for it. So that's where this course or this class, this chapter, and fits in to, you know, running the business and making the business a success. And that's how you could go ahead and do it. So we started it with the first stage, if you will, and we broke it up and we took those costs and separated them by some activities. Then in this problem, we've taken those activities and broken it down based on estimated activities to come up with activity rates. And then that allows us to go out and check if and keep in mind now we can go back and see what customers are profitable. Okay. And we can see when we're quoting new business, we can make sure that, you know, when we add a new customer, we're making, you know, customers, we're adding customers that are in fact profitable for us to add. Questions? So that's how we use this data. And once again, it is very hard to find, in most cases, your accounting data that has this type of information readily available. So with that being said, let's go and take a look at exercise 7.5. And 7.5 gives us another kind of version of this that allows us to, and I'm at 7.5 and I'm on page 334. And let's just take a look at how what the problem is here that we have, okay? We're looking for product and customer profitability analysis. And the company has a standard and also makes custom-made paragliders, I guess. Management has designated an activity with the following activity pools. So they've gone through that first stage, okay, which we did in problem 1, or the first problem. They've gone through the second stage, which we just did for that lawn care service, okay, and came up with those rates in the table: supporting direct labor, order processing, customer design, and customer service, okay. And keep in mind, the purpose of this is direct material, you know, to do overhead, okay? To do what's happening in the office and to do overhead this way. Direct materials and direct labor we don't have to do. And so then management would like analysis of the profitability of a particular customer. Keep in mind, banks are doing this. I mean, and I keep pointing to banks. Service companies have started to really do this. And when you see them, you know, changing the prices on their checking accounts or what have you, A lot of times they're doing that in response to some analysis like this, telling them what customers are profitable. So what they want us to do then is a customer profitability on this particular customer. So let's go ahead and do this. And since we're looking at profitability, we're not just looking at costs. We're going to start off with sales. And we're going to start off with sales. And they sold them 20 standard models and 3 custom design. And notice I'm reading that chart across. So they sold them 20 standard, and they were $18.50 for each standard. And they sold them 20 of those. And then the custom, okay, they sold 2,400. They sold 3 of those. So let's go ahead and go back here. And we've got 1850 times 20. That's 37 grand. And we've got 2,400 times 3, which is 7,200. So my total sales from this customer is 44,200. That's my total sales. So now what I want to do is I want to subtract my costs. Okay, I want to find out if this customer is profitable. So I went ahead and started with my sales, and now I want to do my costs. And I'm going to start just like I did, before spring break with direct materials. And we sold the direct materials for the standard is $564 at $20 a piece. So we've got 564 times 20, 11,280. $11,280. And for the custom, we have 634 times 3. And I'm not even going to try that in my head. 1902. So my direct material costs are 13,182. So that's my direct materials cost. Any questions so far? So that's direct materials. Now let's go ahead and do direct labor. Once again, we're going to do it standard and custom. And keep in mind the other spot where I've seen this come into play is like in print shops. Somebody comes in and wants a business card that's black and white versus somebody that wants 2 color or 3 color. How do you charge? What's it cost to set up? What's it cost to clean the equipment? Can I run 2 or 3 of them in a row where I don't have to change to a different color ink or what have you? I mean, that's where all these things start to come into play. So now I've got direct labor. And the standard, my direct labor costs for my standard are $19.50 an hour. Okay, so it's $19.50 per hour. It takes 26.35 hours to make a standard one, and I'm making 20 of them. So I've got 19.5 times 26.35 times 20. 10,276.50. And for the custom, it's still 1950. It's only 3 units, but how long do those take? Those take 28 hours. So I've got 1950 times 28 times 3, 1638. And I can't even read my own writing. 10,276, I think it was 50, wasn't it? $10,276.50 plus, I may just round to here. 1638. $11,914.5. So let's just round it to 11,915. So that's my direct labor. Now, still working on costs. So my direct materials, my direct labor, supporting direct labor, which in earlier chapters we called manufacturing overhead. Okay, they're using, I don't know why they're using supporting direct labor here, but really from our standpoint, it is manufacturing overhead. Okay, and we've got, once again, standard and custom. In the standard, the cost instead of $19.50 was $26 times 26.35 times 20. So we've got 20, let's clear it. 26 times 26.35 times 20, 13,702. And then for the custom, it's 26 times 28 times 3. $21.84. So that's going to be 86, 15, 886. So that's my supporting direct labor. So direct materials, you know, we didn't have to use it for. Direct labor, we didn't have to use it for. Okay. Supporting direct labor, we didn't use it for. Okay, we used some of our other models for that. Oh, supporting direct labor, they had 26. So there we go with supporting direct labor. I'm just going to follow the activity cost pools there. They've got order processing. So next we'll have order processing. Okay, and order processing was $284 per unit, and they did 4 orders. Now this is one of those spots, 1136. This is one of those spots where perhaps I can change my cost process, or I can change my process. Maybe I want to encourage them to only order less frequently, because it costs $284 every time they place an order. So maybe that's a spot where I can encourage bigger orders. Okay, and by encouraging bigger orders, I could take a customer that's unprofitable and make them profitable. Okay, so you start to look at things like that from a business standpoint, from a management standpoint. I've got a customer. The last thing I want to do is tell the customer, go away. Okay. So the question then becomes, how can I make that customer profitable? What can I do to make that customer profitable? And it might be as simple as changing their order behavior. Hey, instead of ordering it 4 times a year, let's see if we can't maybe give them even a discount, order it twice a year. Okay. Or, you know, what have you, or encourage them to buy more. Okay. And think about it, you know, you're all going to either love me or hate me for this. Think about all the stuff you've ordered online in the last year. And think about those companies that said free shipping if you order $50 or more, or $100 or more, whatever that number is. Why do they do that? Part of the reason is they're trying to get you up to a point where you're going to be a profitable customer. And if you're not, they're going to charge you for shipping. That's what they're doing, folks. Okay. They're just trying to make sure that you're a profitable customer for them. And so it makes sense. And so that's one of the reasons, one of the simple ways they do it to encourage you and to help you make, you know, become a profitable customer from their standpoint. So that was order processing. Custom design is the next one. So we've got custom design. And keep in mind, there were only 3 of them. Okay. But there were 3 of them at 186 a piece. So we've got 3 times 186, which is 558. Okay, and then the last one there is customer service. Obviously, this is only one customer, so that customer service is $379. So now I'm going to take up, I've got my revenue up top. I've added up all my costs there. And so now my customer margin is $1,144. So that customer, you know, is profitable, assuming I've got all my other costs in there. You know, I'm being a little hopeful, if you will, that all my other costs are in there, and I've got all my other costs included. Questions? So that's how we use it for determining whether a customer is profitable, what have you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I think this is really interesting because, you know, a customer could think, hey, you made $44,000 in sales, you know, to me last year or whatever, or over my last few orders. But really, after you took out all the expenses, you only made them $1,100. So
exactly. And that's the key. I mean, from their perspective, that's the key. And what you never want to, you know, necessarily turn the customer away, but by looking at data like this, it gives you an idea. Hey, are there things we can do? You know, maybe it was a customer that required, you know, a lot of order processing. Is there a way that we can encourage them for bigger orders? Okay. Is there a way perhaps to charge appropriately for that custom design? You know, maybe in the past I gave that custom design for free. And maybe now what I need to do is charge for it. You know, what this does is just gives you a lot of information that you can then use to figure out, hey, what.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're inflated, our thoughts as being a customer too, that we are making that person or that business a whole lot more money than we actually are. So it's interesting to me to see it from the other side, that, don't feel too important necessarily.
Well, I mean, yeah, but and I totally agree. I mean, every customer's, it, I've been amazed. Okay. I have been amazed, but, it's tough. It's tough sometimes for businesses, but I've seen from a business perspective, you get rid of customers and you become more profitable. It's not something you want to do. You'd much rather find a way to say, hey, maybe can I charge for, I've been giving you those custom designs. I'm going to have to start charging for them now. Okay. Or maybe can I encourage you to, instead of 4 orders, take 2, bigger orders, or whatever it might be, to make you a profitable customer. And banks have become, great at doing that. Questions? I want to do exercise 7.4. It's right above it. And I'm just going to do it for one of the materials, just because it illustrates some other good points that I just want to make here as I'm finishing up on this chapter. So it's exercise 7.4. They've already got the costs there for us. And we're just going to go ahead and do the K425. We're just going to do, so let me just mark this so we've got it. It's, exercise 7.4. Okay. And it's K425 is the only one we're going to do, just because, I mean, hey, we can all operate calculators or Excel spreadsheets and do a lot of these items, but I just, once again, want you to think about all these things that go into it. And they have some really nice activity cost pools here. That'll give you some stuff to hopefully think about. The activity cost pool, and I'm just going to copy them right down there from that top table, right at the top of page 334. They've got supporting direct labor. Okay, keep in mind, we called that manufacturing overhead. Machine processing. Machine setup. Production orders. Product sustaining. And then total. And I just want to talk about a couple of these items because, supporting direct labor, manufacturing overhead makes sense. But things like machine setup, I mean, if you've never been in a manufacturing setting, what have you, I want you to think about every time, I have a different customer order come in, especially if I'm doing contract work or what have you, I have to reset up the machine. Okay. And I always think of a print shop, only because my brother used to work at one. I saw how they worked, whatever. Think about it. Every time I get a new order in or what have you, I got to take the machine and reset it up. Okay. That takes time. Machine processing, maybe cleanup. Okay. If I can go from one job to the next job without, in this, I don't mean to say I'm filthy or anything, but if I can go from one job to the next job without having to clean it up, that's going to save me time and effort and what have you. And so you think about it from a print shop where maybe they if I can group together all the black, the items I'm printing just black, as opposed to black color, black color, black color, black color. If I do black, 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 color, 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 that might be far more efficient. Okay, because I don't have to take the machine apart, clean it up, set it up, take it apart, clean it up, set it up. I don't have all that. So when we start thinking about how we're going to do things, that comes into play. Now we had some numbers here. We had $6 for And I'm just copying these activity rates. These are activity rates. $6, $4, $50 a setup. Okay, $90 for an order. And machine setup, $50. If I can encourage customers to order in such a way that I don't have to reset up for every particular product, I can save them a ton of money. And so when you start thinking about these things, we've got shipments. Oh, I forgot shipments, didn't I? Product orders, shipments. Let me just slide it in here. Shipments were $14 a shipment. And then product sustaining was $8.40. That might include things like keeping the engineers on staff, the president, what have you. Okay. Then I've got activity. Those were my rates, the activity. And this is, keep in mind, there were different things. This were labor hours. This was machine hours. This is per setup. Production orders per order. Shipments per shipment. And product sustained per customer, or per product. So now my activity, that's going to come from the lower table there. Okay. And so now I've got direct labor hours of 80. So my total is $480. I have 100 machine hours. So that's 400. I have one setup. That's 50. I've got one order. It's 90. Got one shipment. That's 14. And I've got one product, which is 840. So the total is 1874. Okay, the total is 1874. So that is the total overhead costs that would be assigned to K425. Okay. Now a quick note, those are the overhead costs that would be assigned. And it says that we produced 200 units of K425. So if I wanted to, the question doesn't say this, but I could take it even one step further and say, if I am producing 200 units, I could take 1874 divided by those 200 units. Is this for one customer? No, for the two products. So I could take that 1874 divided by 200. So $9.37. Okay. Per unit. So I can take my direct materials, whatever that would be. I take my direct labor, whatever that would be. This is my really, I'm going to call it my manufacturing overhead, what have you. The product sustaining, I'm not sure what's included in there. I'm not sure how much of the office staff, what have you, but that can help me find then the cost per unit. Am I charging enough? Am I charging enough? Questions? if not for next week, just to kind of chapter 7 assignment. Chapter 8, Learn Smart. Quick note about chapter 8. I was talking to my daughter. My daughter's an accountant. And she goes, we missed they missed their numbers for January and February, whatever it was. And so the bosses asked me to redo the budget. Chapter 8 deals with budgeting for the year. And she goes, does he realize what that entails? And as you read chapter 8 and as you're doing the Learn Smart for chapter 8, think of all the things that have to be budgeted. And just think in terms of your car. And I like the car because we can all visualize it. We've all had one, what have you. Think about it. They need a budget for every part on that car to make sure it comes in at the appropriate time, that they've ordered enough that they can continue production. Okay. So when you think about their budgeting and you start thinking they've got a budget for not only how much it costs, but how many pieces they want, how many tires, how many steering wheels, how many front seats, how many transmissions, how many bolts that are going to hold that transmission in place or however it's done. When you start thinking about that, it's very tedious. You know, thank God for Excel spreadsheets, and thank God for the people that love doing that, because when I used to do it and they'd come to me, the marketing guys would come to me and say, we just have one small change. You know, I am not a violent person, but you really wanted to wring their necks, because one small change changes everything, you know? And so that's what we're going to do next week. We're going to talk about budgeting. Quick note also, once again, it's a lot like this week, just a lot of math following it along. And that's almost the hardest part, is to follow along. Hey, what happens? And think about it, you know, it's, you know, April 1st, my leftover inventory is what I had on March 31st. But, and that becomes my beginning inventory for April 1st of various parts and, you know, what have you. And so it really becomes an Excel nightmare, perhaps. We're not going to talk about it from an Excel standpoint, but it is really a lot of work. Any questions? Glad everybody had a safe and is back, and we'll continue pressing forward here, and we'll be in good shape. So if you have any questions, send me an email. If not, I will see you and talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sass.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thanks, you too.